It's extension season in MLB. Here's the Atlanta Braves that need a new deal. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, February 21st. This is your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And tons of content both on the podcast and on the Substack, so make sure you're checking out both of those. You're subscribed to both the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube. Leave a 5-star review while you're at it. And the newsletter, where we had a bunch of great content up this week. And seeing some of the extensions that have been signed across baseball, like managers, maybe. Aaron Boone of the Yankees got one. It made me think about extensions for the Atlanta Braves. Who is the best candidate to get one? Who needs one? And who is it too early to sign? And I think the number one candidate to get extended on the Atlanta Braves right now is closer Raisel Iglesias. He's in the final year of his deal. He's making $16 million this year. This is the final year of a 4-year, $58 million deal he signed with the Angels, with Atlanta then turning around and trading for him the end of that same season, and arguably absolutely getting their money's worth from that deal. Since he's been in Atlanta, so Raisel Iglesias has done 2 full seasons, and then the end of 2022. This is the 4th year of that deal. He is 11-6 with a 1.96 ERA across his time in Atlanta. 68 saves, so he's got one blown one in there that I wish he hadn't blown. 151 in the third innings, 33 walks, 166 strikeouts, and 11 home runs allowed. That is 2 walks per 9 innings. That is 9.9 strikeouts per 9 innings, and that is 0.7 home runs per 9 innings. He finished with 2.9 WAR last year alone, and he's sitting at 5.4 across his 152 appearances for the Braves. And we saw a couple things last year from Iglesias that we had not seen from him yet in Atlanta. Statistically, it technically wasn't his best, wasn't the best season of his career, or even his best season in Atlanta, because after he was acquired down the stretch in 22, he was arguably the best reliever in baseball. He put up 1.4 WAR in 28 appearances because he allowed a grand total of 1 earned run on 17 hits and 26 in the third innings. But for full seasons, that was the best full season of Iglesias' career last season. 6-2 record, second highest win total of his career, 34 saves, tied for his career high with a year in Cincinnati and a year in LA. 1.95 ERA was the lowest ERA of his career for a full season. And trying to decide, do you sign Raisel Iglesias or not to an extension is a little bit complicated, actually. And I think it feels like it should be a slam dunk, right? A lot of fans have asked, like, why have we not already done this? So let's look at the pros and cons, and then the complicating factor, let's look at some comps based on age, because I think that's where you're going to find there's a little bit of this is not a slam dunk, okay? I just covered it. His performance has been stellar, right? That is the biggest pro to signing Raisel Iglesias to an extension, is he has been fantastic in Atlanta. And again, last season, from an ERA perspective, the best season of his career. The issue, the flip side of this, is he's overperformed his fielding independent pitching and his expected ERA in Atlanta. Okay, so his ERAs by year, that partial year, 0.34. In 23, he had a 2.75. Last year, he had a 1.95. His expected ERAs are usually a run, 0.7 of a run to a run higher. That 0.34, his fielded independent pitching was 1.52. His expected ERA was 3.10. In 2023, a 2.75. Fielded independent pitching was a 3.26. Expected ERA was a 3.16. 2024, 1.95 ERA. Fielded independent pitching was a 2.65. Expected ERA was a 2.24. So he has outperformed the expected stats every year he's been in Atlanta. Now, even with all of that, in 24, he had the smallest spread between those. And there is something to the idea that certain types of players can consistently outperform some of those expected stats on a year-to-year basis, right? I'm not saying he's automatically going to regress in 25, okay? But it is something that a lot of front offices will take into account when trying to decide whether or not to extend Raisel Iglesias. Another pro here for extending Raisel is his stuff is as good as it has been, right? His average four-seam fastball velocity last year was 95 miles an hour. His sinker was 95.6. All of that outpaces what it was in 23. All of that outpaces what it was in 22. Like his time in Atlanta, this was his highest average fastball velocity on both fastballs in his time here. So the stuff is not getting worse simply because he's getting older. The changeup, primary pitch, which that happened for the first time in 23, where his fastball became his primary pitch. We've talked about this ad nauseum now. That's a very Atlanta Braves thing to do. Hey, your changeup's exceptional. Rather than throwing your four-seam fastball 35% of the time and your changeup 25% of the time, flip those, right? Like when he was with LA, 35% fastball, 25% changeup, 30% slider. He got here and it let us, hey, flop that around, throw that changeup more. Since he's been the full season starter, it's been his primary pitch. Now the four-seamer's close. In 23, 35% changeup, 32% four-seamer. In 24, it was 30 and 28. He was more balanced in 2024 as far as changeup to four-seamer. And when you factor in the sinker, a fastball has still been his primary pitch. It's just been different pitches, right? So his stuff is not slipping, okay? The flip side of this, his strikeout rate has been slipping, okay? In 2021, the first year of that extension when he was in LA, not extension, that free agent contract when he was in LA, 37.7% strikeout rate. In 2022, divided between Atlanta and LA, 31.7%. In 2023, 29.4%. In 2024, a second lowest strikeout rate of his career at 26.3%. The only season he had a lower strikeout rate was his first full season, which was 2016 in Cincinnati at age 26, and he had a 2.53 ERA that year. He wasn't bad. And you can see how he's not as strikeout reliant as some other closers are. But the strikeout rate was down. Strikeouts per 9 innings, career low of 8.8 per 9, whereas he had been as high as 13.2 in 2021. I ultimately don't know if that's enough to cause you hesitation, but it is something to acknowledge. Another pro for extending Raisel Iglesias is he is very well respected in the clubhouse, right? He has been part of this team now for a couple seasons. He is a veteran. He is a leader. He's more of a quiet leader from what I've observed, from what I've heard, what I've been told. But he is a leader in that clubhouse. And one of the things that AA always talks about is how these guys fit into the clubhouse. There's a pro on the side of extending Raisel Iglesias. He is great in the clubhouse. A con, the corresponding con here, I try to do them in pairs. The corresponding con is he's not great on the aging curve. All right, your situation here, because he is 35 years old, he turned 35 back in January. Because he is 35 years old, I went into the MLB Trade Rumors contract database, and I pulled every reliever contract where the guy was 35 years or older, starting at the end of the 2020 season through today. And there have been exactly 5 free agent contracts and 1 extension for a guy of that age or more. The 2 closest comps that I found in this was Blake Trinan signing with the Dodgers back in December. It'll be his age 37 and 38 season. He got 2 years and $22 million. And the other comp was back in December 2022 when the Red Sox signed Kenley Jansen. 2 years, $32 million. Started the contract at age 35, ended the contract at age 36. Raisel Iglesias is already making $16 million. I don't think you're going to get a discount on that to sign him to an extension. And because of his success, because of how well he's been, and he's coming off arguably the best season of his career from an ERA, saves, all that perspective, I don't think you're going to be able to get him for cheaper, and I don't think you're going to be able to get him for just 2 years. So if you were to sign Raisel Iglesias to an extension, I think the Kenley Jansen deal is the floor, and it's probably going to end up being something like 3 for $50 to sign Raisel Iglesias to an extension. Is that something you want to do? You can have the conversation about how much money you commit to the bullpen, right? Joe Jimenez, Pierce Johnson, Aaron Bummer, like all these guys are already signed on multi-year deals. You don't have a closer in waiting. There's not, unless you're thinking about moving a Hurston Waldrop or somebody back there, unless you think Daisabel Hernandez will take a leap or two, you don't have a closer in waiting. So if it's me, as much as I'm a little bit nervous about signing the guy for up to through his age 38 season, pretty much, or through his age 37 season, I think if you are going to extend somebody on this roster who's going to be a pending free agent, I think it's got to be Raisel Iglesias. And I think you're probably having to do somewhere around 3 for $50. Maybe you can get away with 2 for 34, 35 with a club option attached. But I do feel like, even despite the strikeout rate slipping a little bit, I think I'm still okay signing him because he's not been as strikeout reliant as a bunch of other guys in the league to get saves. He's done everything you've asked him to do. He's gone multiple innings down the stretch. He's pitched on back-to-backs. He's gone out there for a 3rd consecutive day, even though I remember writing a piece freelancing for SI about how that wasn't a good idea. If there's a guy I'm extending, it's Raisel Iglesias, and I think if the deal ends up being for 3 years, it's not the worst situation in the world to do that. In just a minute, the other big pending free agent this offseason, Marcell Ozuna. Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about extension candidates among the Atlanta Braves roster. And Marcell Ozuna is the other big free agent this offseason. Entering his age 34 year. This is a club option year after the multi-year deal that he got. This is obviously the club option year deal for him. And he's in a little bit of a different situation than Raisel Iglesias. Let's get into what he's done. Let's get into the pros and cons and what the deal might look like. Across his time in Atlanta, it's important to point out that Raisel Iglesias, all told, has been very good. Okay? 130 OPS plus across his time in Atlanta. 273, 345, 511 is the slash line. 127 home runs, 342 RBI. But that is the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So they bring him in for 2020 on a 1-year, $18 million deal. This was the Josh Donaldson replacement, right? Donaldson had gotten $23 million for 2019. He ended up going to the Twins on a 4-year deal. I think it was 4 years. And so Atlanta brought in Marcell Ozuna, and he was amazing in 2020. 2.6 WAR in that shortened season. He led all of baseball with 267 plate appearances. He led the National League with 18 homers and 56 RBI in 2020. Hit .338 with a 1.67 OPS, was a Silver Slugger at DH. I believe he was the first ever National League Silver Slugger at DH. Also led the National League in total bases. Played DH, left field, and right field. Again, 18 home runs, 56 RBI. 21 through 22, he played a combined 172 games because of injury, because of off the field and legal issues, and they were not good games that he played. From 21 to 22, he was worth -1 WAR. He hit .222 with a 675 OPS and a total of 30 home runs in that 172 games. And this is after he had been given a 4-year, $65 million deal at the end of 2020, right? So the first 2 years of this deal looked like it was a huge swing and a miss by Alex Anthopoulos. 23 started off awful that first month. I want to say he was batting under 100. There were a lot of calls to just DFA him and eat the money, but the Braves stuck with him. He rebounded that series in Miami in 23, where he hit 4 home runs in 3 days, just went nuclear. Since then, he's been one of the best hitters on this team. For 23 and 24 combined, and that's including that awful month he had, 7.6 WAR while playing 306 games, including every game last year. First time of his career he's done that. He's hit 289 with a 916 OPS, 79 home runs, and 204 RBI. He missed a 4,100 season by 1 homer in Atlanta down the stretch. All-Star in 2024, 4th place finisher for MVP in 2024 as a DH that didn't steal bases like Ohtani did. Pros and cons here, okay? Pros, elite power production, okay? 79 home runs in the last 2 seasons. There's a short list of guys who have hit more home runs than him in the last 2 years. Cons is, despite the 3 stolen bases and 1 triple during his time in Atlanta, he's not giving you anything from a speed perspective, and he's not giving you defensive value. He played the field for just a couple days in 2023. People forget, the opening day left fielder in 2023 was Marcell Ozuna. But after those few games, he hasn't played the field since, although he does take reps every day at first base. He's not actually gotten into a regular season game at first base. So no speed, no defensive value. No defensive value at all. A pro here, he is well respected and valued in that clubhouse, right? The videos that we see, the pregame stuff, the batting practice stuff, he's hanging out with a lot of the Latin American players, with your Ronald Acuna Jr., with your Ozzy Albies, with your Orlando Arcia. But it's not just those guys. Michael Harris in 2023 talked about that the reason that his slump busted was during a game against the Mets. Marcell Ozuna took him down to the tunnel and talked to him for a few minutes. Gave him a kind of a pep talk, told him a thing or two that he noticed. And Michael Harris just went nuclear after that. Like, he is well respected in that clubhouse as one of the best hitters there. He is legitimately a leader on the Atlanta Braves. A con, the flip side of this, is we acknowledged it, he has had legal and off the field trouble in the past. And so, and I'm not saying that is or is not going to recur. I'm acknowledging that happened, and that because that happened, he is probably not going to get the benefit of the doubt from the commissioner's office were anything else to happen. Now, from everything that we've been told, from everything that we've heard, he has made significant strides in his personal life, and a lot of those issues are behind him. Absolutely, I fully believe that. I am a fan of Marcell Ozuna. But we would be remiss to not acknowledge that he is at greater risk of missing time were something to happen than other players would be, because he would not get the grace from the commissioner's office that a first-time offender would. Okay? Another con here we need to acknowledge is how he struggled down the stretch last year. He dealt with a lot of fatigue. He was playing every day. He was trying to single-handedly carry this team. The month of September was his worst month of the year. He hit 277, which doesn't sound that bad, but the month before he hit 327. And his slugging dropped to 383 in that final month. He didn't get a 4,100 season because of this fatigue, right? He finished with 39 home runs. He only had 2 homers in the month of September in 26 games. Now, the flip side of this, the pro to this, is we've seen some writing from some of the beat down in Northport that he did a lot of work physically in the offseason to try to shed weight, to be in better shape, so that he would not wear down over the course of a season. So what does this extension look like? And I think this is where it gets tough. Again, going back to the database from MLB Trade Rumors, I pulled that same time frame, the end of 2020, all the way through today. I pulled every designated hitter contract for a guy who was 34 years or older in the first season that he signed it. And there are a grand total of 5 multi-year DH deals. And a lot of them, unfortunately, aren't even really DH. They're guys who are qualified as DH, so they show up in here. Manny Machado is a third baseman, not a DH. He doesn't count in this. Jose Abreu was playing first base, not DH. He really doesn't belong in here. The only real DH contracts I think that apply in this, Justin Turner and Nelson Cruz. Okay. Justin Turner in 2022, December 2022. Again, here's the Red Sox. 2 years, $21.7 million. So $10.9 million AAV, covered his age 38 and 39 seasons. I don't believe he did not play third base for them. He played a little bit of first base and DH. That was the only real multi-year deal that counts in there. Nelson Cruz had 2 one-year deals. In 2021, he signed with the Twins at age 40 for $13 million. In 2022, he signed with the Nationals for $15 million at age 41. Both of those came in the spring. The Twins deal was February. The Nationals deal was mid-March. So if you wanted to extend Marcell Ozuna, I think the Charlie Morton strategy of a 1-and-1 is the best way to do it. A 1-year deal with a 1-year club option attached to it. Does Marcell take that, though? That's the big question. He said he wants to be here. He said he wants to stay with Atlanta. Again, he's liked in the clubhouse. Arguably, he's valued more for Atlanta than anybody else because other fan bases there are people in those fan bases that have that prejudice against him for those legal issues. Does he take a one on a $16 million deal or something like that? Can you get him? Maybe you can get him at 2 for $30 with a club option. Do you feel comfortable giving him 2 guaranteed years, given how much he struggled stamina physically down the stretch last year while not playing defense? And the other side of this is if you extend Marcell Ozuna, now you have a situation where you don't have the ability to stick a guy into DH to give him a break. You can't rotate Ronald Acuna Jr. through there. You can't rotate Jurickson Profar through there. When you call up Drake Baldwin, you can't have him in the lineup with Sean Murphy starting if Marcell Ozuna is your everyday DH. So this one's a tougher conversation to me. And I really think this will end up being something where Marcell Ozuna is going to get to test free agency. And then at the end of that process, as he has an offer from somebody else, Atlanta is going to have to decide, do we want to match this offer or are we going to let him walk in free agency? I don't think they're going to extend him on anything more than a 1-1. And I don't think he's going to want to take anything less than 2 guaranteed years, given that he's entering his age 35 season. His age 34 season right now. He'll be 35 next year. Really tough. In just a second, let's go through some of the other options for extensions. Who makes sense? Who doesn't make sense? We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today for Friday, February 21st, talking about potential extensions on the Braves roster. The guy that I've heard the most about extending is Spencer Schwellenbach. He was dynamic in his first year as a starter. We did a whole show on this, by the way, back in the podcast feed, October 30th. We did a whole show on this, the pros and cons and everything. But doing some of the work that we did here, I think the floor for this extension is probably what, again, the Red Sox gave Brayan Bello. He got 6 years, $55 million. I feel like the difficulty here on this deal is you gave a deal to Spencer Strider, a similar situation. After a full year of service time, a full year up in the majors, in his case, Rookie of the Year runner-up, whereas Schwellenbach was a couple spots down. And he got 6 for $75 with a $22 million club option. Schwellenbach's probably in a similar situation on a deal. I don't think you can get as low as 6 for $55. I don't know if you feel comfortable doing 75 over 6. Maybe that's something where you do 7 for $80. You try to go a little bit longer, but a little bit less AAV. I still ultimately don't think that they would do it until after this season, simply because of what it might do to the CBT this year if you were to do it. There goes any hope of resetting the CBT, because right now he counts very little on the CBT because he's making league minimum. Other candidates people have asked about. Position players, Jared Kelenic and Orlando Arcia. I don't think Jared Kelenic is going to be a guy you're going to extend. He's got 3 years of arbitration left after this year. He was a Super 2, so he's got 3 years of arbitration left after this season. 26, 27, 28, going into 29. Typically, when you extend those young guys, it's because you think that paying them guaranteed money is going to be cheaper than what they would earn in arbitration, and you want the cost certainty and the savings. Atlanta loves values, right? It is entirely possible that Jared Kelenic breaks out this year, right? He's done a lot of work with Tim Hires, including Hires and his assistant Quattlebaum going to Kelenic's house to visit him in the winter, which, bro, he lives in the cold. Why would you do that? No. Ask him to meet you in Florida or somewhere. But if the Braves think Kelenic's going to break out, then absolutely you could lock him up and save money over what he would earn in arbitration. But if you thought he was going to break out, would you have signed Jurickson Profar? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Unless your plan is Kelenic's going to break out, we'll make him the everyday left fielder and Profar is the DH next year. I don't know. We rotate Profar and Acuna in DH, whatever. I don't know. So Kelenic, probably not a guy. Orlando Arcia, people are going to hate this. There is an argument to lock up Orlando Arcia for a couple years. He's making $2 million this year. And if the money's in the same range, locking up his age, he has a club option for 2025, his age 30 season. If you were to guarantee that and tack on one additional year, that gives you a little bit more time to figure out your situation at shortstop. Now you're not reliant on either Nacho Alvarez being able to be the guy, signing somebody in free agency, because again, these classes in free agency are not really good, or swinging a massive trade, right? You would know that Arcia can do 2 more years. He could do 24 and 25. He could do 25 and 26. And you could push the decision on who is your shortstop to the 2027 season, which by then, maybe one of these young international players like a John Gill, maybe one of those guys is ready to come up. Who knows? There is a case for Orlando Arcia. And it would have to be cheap enough where if he ended up not being the shortstop, you don't mind carrying a $2 million backup. That's been the whole thing on Arcia now. He's making $2 million. If you have to move him to a backup spot, that's $2 million on the bench. Okay, not a big deal. Who cares? It's $2 million. Who cares? Other guys people have asked about, AJ Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrop. I'm holding off on both of those. That to me doesn't make a ton of sense right now, simply because, one, Smith-Shawver's going into his final option year. And so if you extend him, you in essence are saying we're going to keep him in the majors in some capacity, right? You don't typically see guys signed to multi-year deals get sent down if you can help it. And so that's a situation where you would have to, in essence, be deciding now, accepting we'll move him to the bullpen and stop trying to make him a starter. And I think he's going to be a starter. I don't quite think you're ready to pop AJ Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrop yet. Somebody asked about Ian Anderson. Similar situation here. He's out of options. If you extend him now, you are committing to moving him to the bullpen if he doesn't work out as a starter. And there's just no reason. I understand why he would want to take an extension, right? He wants to get paid. He's got 3 years of arbitration remaining. I think that if he comes back and looks like a major league starter again after this year, then you could look at an extension knowing that he'd be in your rotation for a couple years. You buy out a couple free agency years because his arbitration history is going to be based off of his first year award. Like you're in a whole thing here, right? You could make a case for Ian Anderson after this season. I don't think you can make one now. Grant Holmes is a guy, if they're really as high on Grant Holmes as a potential starter as they say they are, then Grant Holmes is a guy that could get an early extension. You lock him up, but here's the thing. You've got 5 years of control over Grant Holmes. He's not going to be arbitration eligible for 2 more seasons. So even there, while I want him to get signed, he's a great dude. I want him to get paid. There's not a business reason unless you think he's going to get so expensive in arbitration that you need to go ahead and lock him up ahead of that. And if they're this confident in him, then there's your argument to do it. But I just don't see him performing to the point where he's making double-digit millions in arbitration. There's really not a ton of arbitration candidates on this roster. I want to hear from you there. Raisel Iglesias, what do you think? Marcell Ozuna, what do you think? I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter, Braves_today. You can email me, contact@bravestoday.com. In the meantime, if you're listening on audio, do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop the next episode, and maybe also leave a 5-star review with some great words of affirmation. That would be awesome. Until next time, enjoy the games tomorrow. And this has been Braves Today.